All right, let's get into it. Today we're talking about something that can literally make or break a new employee's experience with a company, onboarding. And look, it's so much more than just a welcome packet and some paperwork. Getting this right is a huge strategic advantage. So how do you take a good onboarding process and turn it into a great one that just keeps getting better? Well, let's dive in. Okay, so let's start with a question that, might be a little uncomfortable. Could your company's very first impression actually be pushing new talent right out the door? It's a serious thing to consider because the data tells us this happens way more often than any of us would like to admit.
Think about this for a second. Up to 20% of all staff turnover happens within the first 45 days. That's 1 out of every 5 new hires gone before they've even had a real chance to start. It just points to this huge and honestly really expensive disconnect right at the beginning of their journey.
And it doesn't stop there either. That risk window, it's even wider. One study found that nearly a third of new hires are thinking about quitting within just 90 days if their onboarding experience is bad. So we're not just talking about a rough first week. This is a foundational problem with consequences that really stick around. But, and this is the exciting part, here's the incredible upside. When a company gets this right, the results are just dramatic. A strong onboarding process can boost new hire retention by a massive 82%. So, the main takeaway here? This is a solvable problem, and the potential payoff is absolutely huge.
So this really brings us to what we could call the onboarding wake-up call. We have to stop thinking of bad onboarding as just some minor HR hiccup. It's a serious business risk that hits everything: productivity, morale, you name it, and especially the bottom line.
And this number, this really puts the scale of the problem into perspective. Only 12%. I mean, that gap between what companies think they're delivering and what employees are actually feeling is just enormous. It tells us that the standard way of doing things is failing almost everybody.
Okay, so if the old model is broken, what's the fix? This brings us to the core idea of this whole explainer. The solution isn't some brand new perfect checklist you can just download. No, it's a dynamic process, and it's fueled by one simple thing: feedback. The source material we're looking at puts it perfectly. So I want you to think of feedback not as some one-time survey you send out, but as the powerful engine that's constantly pushing your onboarding program forward, making sure it never gets stale or outdated.
And this right here really shows the fundamental shift in thinking. You've got the old static model, which basically treats onboarding like a project with a start and a finish line, but the modern feedback-driven model, it sees it as a living, breathing process, one that learns and gets better with every single person who joins.
And here's exactly why that shift is so important. A majority of companies, 58%, admit that their onboarding is mostly just about process and paperwork. They're totally missing the most important part: actually connecting new people to the culture and setting them up to really succeed. So, the big question is, how do we actually build this feedback engine? Well, it all comes down to a really simple, repeatable, and incredibly powerful framework. Let's break down this 3-step feedback loop that makes all the continuous improvement happen. And honestly, it's as straightforward as this. 1, you collect meaningful feedback. 2, you analyze it to find those actionable insights. And 3, probably the most important part, you act on those insights to make real improvements. This cycle, collect, analyze, act, is the absolute heart of the whole thing. Let's start with step 1, collecting feedback. The goal here isn't just to ask, "Hey, how was it?" It's about systematically getting specific, honest input on what's working, what's not, and why, straight from the people who are actually going through the experience. And you've got a whole toolkit for this. The real key is to mix up your methods. Structured surveys give you that hard data, those numbers. But the one-on-one check-ins, that's where you get the personal stories behind the numbers. Combining all of these gives you a true 360-degree view of what's really happening. Okay, so once you have all that data, you move on to step 2. Analysis. This is where you turn all those raw comments and ratings into a clear roadmap for what to do next. You're basically trying to go from "here's what people said" to "here's what we need to do about it." You see, good analysis means you're looking for patterns. So if everyone keeps mentioning information overload on day 1, don't just treat the symptom by, say, sending fewer emails. You've got to dig deeper for the root cause. Why is it overload? Is the timing off? Is the content not relevant? Answering that question is how you find a solution that actually works. And that brings us to the final, and I'd argue most critical step: actually acting on what you've learned. I mean, all the data in the world is totally useless if it doesn't lead to change, right?
This is all about closing the loop and making the process tangibly better for the next person who walks through the door. An audit of the US IRS, of all places, gave us this perfect way to think about it. Feedback can't just vanish into a black hole. It has to lead directly to an action plan. Because if it doesn't, the whole system just breaks down, and people will stop bothering to give you their honest thoughts.
Now, having a 3-step process is great, but to really make it last, you've got to go deeper. The ultimate goal here is to embed this whole cycle into your company's DNA, to make continuous improvement a real organizational habit, not just some project you do once in a while.
And, like any big cultural shift, it absolutely has to start at the top. When leaders are the ones championing great onboarding, when they're putting resources behind it, and when they openly show that they value feedback, it sends a powerful message to everyone else that this stuff really matters. And the manager's role in all this is just crucial. Check out this Gallup data. It shows that when a manager is actively involved in the process, their new hires are over 3 times more likely to say their onboarding was a success. The manager is the one who turns a corporate process into a personal, supportive experience.
But listen, none of this works unless new hires feel safe enough to be truly honest. And you build that safety by constantly communicating that their feedback is valued, by protecting their input and, this is the big one, by showing them the positive changes that come from it. When people see that their voice actually leads to action, they'll use it.
So, we'll just end with that question. It's really the ultimate test, isn't it? Is your onboarding process getting better with every single new hire? Because real success isn't about having some perfect plan from day one. It's about having a system that ensures your plan is always learning, always evolving, and always improving.